what might be a really near perfect fit for one person could be really not a great fit for the other. And so
Right.
the value of that product or service really is subjective in that sense. There's no real objective value for the most part. If so, I think it's ultimately understanding that whoever you're trying to help, that your solution could or could not be a good fit for them. And if you're going into that with perspective where you're like, hey, my job isn't to try to get them to do anything. That's not my
Mm.
job.
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. What is happening, my friends, and welcome back to another powerful episode of Marketing by Design. Today, you and I are going to learn from the one and only Marcus Schaller. First of all, if you are a high performing marketer and you're wanting to learn from other people getting exceptional results in your field, you're in the exact right place. So stick with me. Marcus Schaller is a fractional B2B marketing and sales consultant. I connected with Marcus through the American Marketing Association here in Columbus, Ohio, and the guy just has a wealth of experience across all marketing roles throughout his career. And I think when a lot of us marketers hear the word sales, we just get the total wrong idea in our minds. Part of it comes from probably a lack of experience if you haven't been in it as long as Marcus or I have, or maybe you've just had bad exposure to people like Grant Cardone or Andy Elliott, or maybe even Hormozy, if that's your viewpoint on it. At the end of the day, sales, especially in marketing, comes down to just making friends and making an appropriate offer. People know, like, and trust you, and it's a natural fit for what you offer. The connection is already there and the work is already done. But today on the podcast, you and I are going to learn from Marcus what multiple decades in relationship driven sales has taught him, some mistakes that he's made in his own past that you can learn from, and specific actions that make you more trustworthy and increase the odds that people are going to want to partner with you and work with you for the long term. Marcus is a bit of an undiscovered gem, and I'm super excited to give him a mic and share him with the Marketing by Design audience. I think we're going to learn a lot today. So that's enough for me. Let's get straight into the podcast. But before we do, I have a quick resource that I would like to share with the marketers in the audience. If you are approaching a redesign of your website, this is one of the most vulnerable positions to be. It's so confusing. There's a million websites out there, and everyone who sees a website is a website critic. So what I've done is I've done the hard work for you. I've compiled a list of hundreds of websites, taken screenshots, and put them into a filterable Notion database just for you. When approaching a redesign, it's important to start from a place that works, and I've done the hard work of curating what looks good just for you. You can grab that in the first link below, along with all of Marcus's information. But without further ado, please welcome Marcus Schaller by Design.
When you're selling anything other than purely transactional, very kind of, somebody walks into a store and they're going to buy something, you're helping them pick something out. Maybe not quite as relationship driven, in the same way as if you're selling complex B2B services like what we do and what you do, right?
Mhm.
And so everything is relationship driven, right? And I think where sometimes the nuances come in is what kind of relationship is it? And it can get very easy to get confused between, well, relationship means personal relationship. That means we have to be like best friends, or I have to be like really funny or anything like that. As I think that's where we can start parsing a bit about what does it mean to actually be focused on building a relationship with somebody in a more complex selling situation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think part of it, I heard this really recently, so it's like I am victim to what they call recency bias. Is that the things that happen within a modicum of time when you're talking, they have a more measurable impact on you. But there's a guy named Jay Klaus who's here in Columbus, and he's done a couple. He owns a business called Creator Science, but he did
Mm,
this workshop, and I listened to this probably about a year ago. He did a workshop called Invisible Selling, and he told a really good, I think all good keynotes, all good lectures, all good presentation speeches have some element of storytelling within them. And he gave the story of, like, he went to an audio engineer, so he went to like a drum music store, and the salesman, he was a salesman, he was the owner of the shop, and he just told this whole story about how he was never sold like the most expensive pair of headphones, but he got to try them, and he was never pushed on a sale, and that all he could hear at the end of it was, after he walked out with nothing and came back later to get, the pair of headphones. So all he was thinking about was how awesome the person was that showed them to him and how
Uh,
bad his current ones were in comparison. And I think there's an element of finding people where they are, and the element of the best sales is that you never felt like you were sold something to begin with. Um,
mm,
you just had a need and you recognized that need and you were able to tie that person or that result to the problem that solved it. I think where a lot of people get lost is they try and either accelerate the path from recognition of problem to a solution, or they just pitch the solution to someone who doesn't even have the problem and they're just trying to get to the end outcome. Um, so in our last chat, you mentioned something along similar lines of literally just putting yourself out there as a person who can solve the problems. Um,
yeah.
talk to me about the relationship that you see between like sales and problem solving and objectifying it like that.
Oh, that's another great question. Problem solving is what I love so much about selling.
Uh-huh.
It's certainly not rejection, you know. So I love solving problems. Um, I love talking to people about problems, particularly business problems. I mean, personal
Uh-huh.
problems too, I guess sometimes, but and really help almost like you almost take an advisor role in this sense. Like I don't want to say like a coach, but you're really there as a sounding board. You're there to kind of see angles and bring up perspectives that maybe that person doesn't see, which we all have blind
Uh-huh.
spots, right? So in a conversation with somebody where they're having a challenge and whether or not what I have to offer is the right solution for them, to be able to help them unpack that, to see new solutions, new possibilities, that's really exciting for me. Um, Back in the day when I was much more of a fixer, it was unfortunately me talking a lot more than listening.
Uh-huh.
Since then, I've learned to shift that, not all the
Uh-huh.
time, but mostly, hopefully. And so I think for me as a student of selling and marketing for well over 2 decades, the thing about that differentiates really great sellers, really great marketers is their motivation. And a lot of that
Uh-huh.
is, are they there to solve a problem, to help somebody solve a problem versus what you mentioned earlier, are they there just to push a solution that they don't even know if that person has that problem? Are they just trying
Uh-huh.
to make quota? Do they have commission breath? Um, so yeah, I think problem solving for me personally is just that's the whole game.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love that. Are there any good people that might be labeled as salesmen that you have taken inspiration from, or you, as you say, do it well? The reason I ask this is because there's a lot of social content on like how to do good sales, how to, you know, increase your pipeline, all this, whatever package bow you put on it. And I think there's a lot of personal, I think there's a lot of bad actors because it totally takes into account like the amount of time that a lot of it takes to, I think, do right. And, when you're looking for a quick fix solution, that's just the nature of social media. Is you're coming there, you're seeing something, and you want the outcome of it real time. You're seeing it in real time. So I think having content out there where people are watching videos, maybe doing sales trainings, um, I would say, especially to someone who maybe invests in a sales training, they expect a result right afterwards. They want to see that direct ROI. But
Mm.
are there any good references that have maybe taught you, maybe formed some of your ideas and philosophies around sales that leave an impression or come to mind?
So, quick question: do you mean particular people or like books that I've read, that kind of thing?
A little bit of both. Let's do one book and one
Okay.
person.
One, but well, I'll start with the person, and I don't want to say there's a
Okay.
specific person, but I think the way there was well, maybe it's tied to a book. One of the first books on sales that I just fell in love with again about 20 something years ago was called Soft Selling in a Hard World, and by Jerry Vass, I believe his name is. And he at the very beginning of the book, he says, selling, and I'm butchering this, but he said something like, selling is usually identified with the worst of its practitioners, right? So,
Mhm.
somebody's trying to hard sell us something, and that's what we see as selling, right? And so we go, ew, selling's gross. I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
And he brings up a good point, and then since then, I've kind of added to that through my own experience. The best salespeople are people that sometimes aren't even in technically a sales profession, right? Like they're not
Exactly.
commission, they're
Yes.
leaders. They're our best boss that we've ever had. They're politicians in some cases, not so much recently, but that's a whole nother thing. But there are people that can get that people want to follow, that they inspire people. That's selling. Let's just not
Hmm.
make any, kind of confusion. Selling is really kind of, so many ways to define it, but it's essentially it comes down to understanding what people are trying to accomplish and what they need and the challenges they have and helping them get it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. Now, books wise, I mean, it's like I'm kind of a, a book junkie with this stuff. If I had to pick one book right now that I'm going to pick two because I think these are really good. There's one that came
Hmm.
out recently, and I think when you and I hung out, I mentioned this
Hmm.
one to you. It's called Give to Get, which
Hmm.
it's only about 6 months old. Um, one of my favorite sales books ever because I think it's so applicable to people that are selling their own services, especially, and they really want to do this where they feel they're in integrity with their values. And then another one that came out a few years ago, 3, 4 years ago, is called Unreceptive.
Hmm.
Unreceptive. And basically, that one, Tom Stanfield, I believe, and that's all about like you're not going to get somebody to listen to you if they're not receptive to actually hearing you. So a lot of
Hmm.
selling is really just creating the conditions for people to actually be emotionally open to even having a conversation. And I think that's where
Hmm.
a lot of people struggle. I still struggle with that, right? Trying to get somebody to pay attention to you is really hard. But that's a very just practical book with a lot of great stuff in it.
Yeah, I love that. I expected the first one because that was the genesis of one of our conversations. So
Mm,
I like the second one there.
yeah.
Plenty of inspiration there. One thing I really want your take and opinion on: how important is it in what your solution is? So you talk about the relationship between the person representing the solution or the product or the service, whatever they are a salesman of,
Mm,
and matching out to the person. How important is it that the person who is selling it actually believes in it? What is the personal relationship there?
ooh.
And maybe you can give us some examples of some of the things some of the problems you've been responsible with solving in your personal relationship. Maybe you had been through it before too. You have some personal involvement. How important is that relationship between what you're selling and the person behind it that's pushing it?
So you like believing in what you're selling, feeling like it's truly valuable, that kind of thing, as opposed to like I can imagine
Yeah.
there's a lot of people selling things that they know it's garbage, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross kind of, land in Florida kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
How important is it to have a real belief in it, or do you think it doesn't matter?
oh, I think it definitely matters. I think it matters more to some than others, right? There are some people
Hmm.
they don't care, right? Whatever, they're just for them it's not important. I think
Hmm.
for me, it's of critical importance. I think there's nuance to it in the sense that first of all, what we sell, whatever we sell, even our own services. Like I was freelancer for a long, long time, so I was selling
Hmm.
myself, right? And I have
Yeah.
every insecurity that everybody else has. There's days where I
Hmm.
think like, oh, I suck, So it
Yeah.
doesn't mean I stop selling myself, but you realize that, like, first of all, there's nothing that's perfect, right? There's never going to be a perfect product, a perfect service, um, but ultimately I think what matters most is, first of all, are you representing something that you do believe is valuable in general? Like you're
Mm.
not trying to cheat people. You're not trying to, sell something that's just a ripoff, basically. Um,
Mhm.
but beyond that, also thinking about fit, right? Because you know what might be a really near perfect fit for one person could be really not a great fit for the other. And so
Right.
the value of that product or service really is subjective in that sense. There's no real objective value for the most part, if unless it's really just, you know, something that shouldn't be
Mhm.
sold to begin with. So I think it's ultimately understanding that whoever you're trying to help, that your solution could or could not be a good fit for them. And if you're going into that with perspective where you're like, Hey, my job isn't to try to get them to do anything. That's not my
Mm,
job. My job is to, as much as possible, understand them, understand their goals, understand their challenges, understand their belief system, their perspective, all these things. That's where the relationship comes in, right? A human
mhm,
to human thing. And
mhm,
then be able to understand what aspects of my product or service might really be most beneficial for them, right?
mm,
And then be able to communicate those things to them in a way that gets them to see, oh, this could be the option that helps me get what I want, right?
mm.
So I think it's not there's it's never just one thing. It's always just a combination of like the person you're trying to help and the way you can help them and how good of a fit. And sometimes it doesn't mean there's no other, like this is the best fit. There's no other product or service that can help them. Maybe there is, but you're there now. You can help them
Mhm.
now. And if you can
Yeah,
truly help them, that's the bottom line.
yeah. You would be the perfect person to ask this. Talk to me about the difference between representing a solution that you provide and doing it on behalf of someone else. Having
Mm,
been on both sides, I think there's a lot of, and currently this is my own fish and water syndrome, is a lot of people have imposter syndrome. They have some of those self-professed insecurities. I'm, I believe I like to think I'm on the other side of that. But when you're in,
mm,
especially as freelancers, man, when you're in the beginning, you're kind of learning on the fly. I wish that when I had first started, I would have had the more honest conversation with clients, people at networking events, people that I wanted to work with. Say, hey, we're gonna be venturing into some uncharted waters here, but I guarantee you, I'm going to if there's something that I don't know, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. Because I was doing that anyway, man. I just wish I had been upfront with them and said, a lot of this stuff I haven't done before, but look, I'm gonna go to war to make sure that you get the solution done. And if we don't get there, then we had a good journey. I'm gonna be completely transparent and throughout the whole process and share with you what I'm learning so that it can help your business. How different is it when you're selling something that you provide versus doing it for on behalf of someone else?
yeah, that's really interesting. I think in some ways it's easier, just my perspective and my experience. It's easier to sell somebody else's thing. It's still mine. I mean, I'm part of our agency and I'm part of the team. It's us, it's not
Yeah.
them I'm selling. But it's like it's not as personal, I guess, right? When I'm selling in the past my copywriting or my strategic, consulting work, it's, like, very personal, right?
Yeah.
And, um, if somebody passes, like, so I'll give you a quick example. Like, I remember years and years ago, I was doing, like, an email kind of campaign, one-to-one, trying to get some copywriting clients, and, so one person just wrote back, I think it was like, "It's not for us," or something like that, and he wasn't mean, it
Mhm.
just was like, "It's not for us," and I just, like, I took it so personally, like,
Yeah.
it's so I also have, like, a history of just anxiety and stuff that I've had to deal with, so it's all mixed together, but, I think that ultimately it's easier for me to be more objective when it comes to selling part of a team, right? And it's
Mhm.
also I don't have the really heavy responsibility of then having to deliver on all of it, right? So I
Yeah.
can focus when I was doing everything and selling everything, it's like you sell it and then it's like, "Okay, now I
Mhm.
actually have to." And I think that's also where it's challenging just as a side, I think it's related to this, maybe not emotionally, but, when you're trying to sell and then you're the one doing the serving, all of it's on you, it's real easy to get into these kinds of, feast famine things because it's hard to do both well,
Oh, it
consistently
is.
every
It
day.
is. It is so hard, man. Like, I think there's something psychologically similar to making a referral for someone. Like, I will speak so much higher on behalf of someone else than I will for myself when it comes to making an
Yeah,
introduction. Like, especially for things like podcasting, if I'm introducing like a mutual guest, I'll say, man, my man Marcus is the best speaker. He is one of the most incredible people that I know. He can talk on anything that you want him to. And when it comes to pitching myself for shows, I'm like, hey, yeah, I have a podcast, I can talk about this, this, and this, and I notice a noticeable shift when I'm talking about people that I like versus myself. So I
Yeah.
totally get that delineation. Um, yeah, I agree with that. It is a lot harder to sell for yourself because when you start to muddy the water with, okay, you have to get the work and also do the work, and also like your own, like, I think when it comes to anything internal for ourselves, we overweight the positives and the negatives. So
Mm,
the things that we like about ourselves, we will see them in a much more stark light. And then the things that we don't like about ourselves, those voices of insecurity are increasingly loud because we're the only
mm.
ones seeing them. It's like an echo chamber sometimes. So I thought it would be a really
Well,
good discussion point too.
real quick too, and I want to throw add to what you just mentioned, and just for you to consider and people listening and watching to consider. Um, I think sometimes we overestimate how interesting we need to be, and I think to
Hmm.
our own detriment. Again, remember I said back in the day I was a fixer. I still am a fixer a little bit, but
Hmm.
it was way too heavy on the like I have to wow them with my intellect and my
Hmm.
talent and my scary awesomeness. And it's first of all, it's exhausting for people. It's
Hmm.
absolutely exhausting. Yeah. And secondly, I'm again paraphrasing this saying, and I don't know who it's from. I apologize, but the most interesting person in the room is the other person.
Mm.
And when that is the case, I mean, when you and I hung out, it's exactly the experience I had with you. You were
Hmm.
like legitimately interested in hearing my opinion about stuff. Like, take a guess about how good I felt about you after that conversation, right? It wasn't because of like,
Yeah,
wow, that guy threw out some wisdom bombs, and you did. But
it's
ultimately,
exactly the same way. Yeah.
but that's what made it such a nice conversation, right?
Hmm.
And because yes, I felt the same way. Like you were interested in me, and I felt like hopefully, I was legitimately coming across it. I really was curious about what you were doing, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's when you think about like having to like, you're promoting somebody else versus yourself, and what you're going to tell them about yourself. I don't really think that's what does it. I don't think that's what
Yeah.
does it. I think ultimately, again, going back to relationships, it's about truly being curious about other people. You don't have to be their best friend. You don't have to think everything that they like. It's not about that, but it's about being like,
Hmm.
hey, here's another person. I'm curious about them. I'm interested. I'm present with them completely. You
Hmm.
put your phone away, right? And I'm present with them.
Hmm.
Um, the quality of my relationships in the last few years that I've learned to do that have like I can't even describe
Yeah.
how much better
Hmm.
they are. So just something to consider when you're thinking about like, do I have to go and wow people? It's like, no, because last time you probably went to these events, and how often do you get approached by somebody who is going to wow you with their awesomeness? And how I don't know
Right.
what your reaction to that was, but for me, often it's kind of like backing away a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the most aversive person in the room to me. Is someone who
Mhm.
feels like, and it's also a sign of insecurity, I think, to feel like I get the sense too when people list their accomplishments, they're a little bit braggadocious that they're really just trying to convince themselves, you know? And I will
Totally.
also double down on and say, to your point, that a lot of times the things that we don't give ourselves credit for are way more interesting to other people. And we don't even think of them as being interesting. Um,
Yeah.
like the things about ourselves that, like some of our stories, because we've heard them, we like literally are the lived experience of them. They're no longer new, novel, fresh, interesting to us. But to someone hearing it for the first time, that could be the most fascinating, like, hook that leads to a great conversation and that they're actually fascinated by. So I want to talk about a little bit more, zooming in a little bit on technicality.
Mm,
um, do you see any differences, because you have a lot of experience just in this sales arena that we kind of umbrella term everything by? Do you see any differences in particular selling services versus products, or do you have experience in both? And can you kind of
mm,
speak a little bit on how you can? Because I think of it conceptually, like if I see something that is like packaged, it's like the Apple iPhone and that bright white case on the shelf. I know that
yeah.
I want that. To me, that's an easy sell. It's logically easy because it has a price tag, it has a clear package. I know exactly what I'm getting. Um, and I don't feel like there has to be the Apple rep that has to like, oh man, look at this touchscreen, look at all the glass on it. I feel like I can make that decision for myself.
Sure.
Versus services, all I care about is the person that's on the other end of it. That's all I care about. That's all I want to hear. I want to know. I want to hear them articulate how they do what they do, their process. I want to be sold to from that side of it. Just me personally.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the differences between services and products and the role that relationships plays in both of them?
Yeah. So I don't have any real experience selling products other than maybe, retail in a store when I was a kid or something like that. But it wasn't really
Okay.
selling. It was
Hmm.
more asking if if they needed help, but they're saying, "No, I'm just looking," and then you walking away. But, uh, but yeah, so with relationships, it's like, conceptually or theoretically, I can approach it from, a service being invisible. A service doesn't exist before you do it,
Hmm.
right? So when it comes to the relationship part of it, it trust. You just posted recently about trust, right, on
Hmm.
LinkedIn. I noticed that, and I post a lot about trust. Trust is a huge component about what we do at Brand Dog because it's ultimately, that's the coin of the realm, right? If somebody doesn't trust you at all, now trust is earned over time. It's not that they're going to trust you fully, but if there's zero trust, then how are they going to? They're not going to believe or buy into the fact that they're going to get this awesome benefit or this awesome result.
Hmm.
So services are far more nuanced. They require a lot more listening. They require a lot more understanding how to package that service or how to deliver that service in a way that's appropriate and a good fit for that particular person rather than just ramming the same kind of like thing down everybody's throat, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and that's one of the benefits of having a service is that it's by its nature is infinitely malleable, right? So you haven't already built it. You didn't already order 10,000 units that are sitting in the warehouse, right?
Hmm.
So you have the ability then to take a basic, even if it's a productized service. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's nice to be able to sell. This is what we do every time, but for the most part, I think a lot of people that even have a productized service still will be, oh yeah, okay, we'll kind of tweak this a little bit.
Hmm.
So I think the hardest part about it is people are going in with a situation where they have concerns, they have fears, there's friction in this, and one of it is like, am I going to get what they say I'm going to get? Am I going to get the
Hmm.
result? Are they going to deliver on time? So there's a lot more proof building that we have to do. There's a lot more credibility that we have to build and earn the trust and all these different things. So the relationship part of it is really kind of consistently showing up,
Hmm.
consistently showing up and following through everything. Like if you say you're going to send something to somebody, you send it. Yeah, like that's the part that people are paying attention to. And when we
Yeah.
drop that ball, if we don't follow up, well, no, I'm going to send you this, and then that doesn't happen, they're automatically, in a lot of cases, going to assume, well, if they're not going to follow up on time or do these things that they're promising before I gave them my credit card number,
Hmm.
what is it going to happen once I give? So there, people are keeping score like that.
Yeah. There. That's so good. And I see any sort of ambiguity as ways that people can I think about it like even on a sales page is I want to tell you I'm thinking of this exact person. We talked before the recording started about like who the audience is, who are we talking to?
No.
People who are really good at keeping that one person front of mind throughout their entire actions during the day. They're filtering, okay, how is this conversation about that person? How are
Mhm.
they the star of the show? And how can I just be the one that's holding their hand and getting them to the outcome that they want? What is the object of their desire? And how can I be the one that helps them get there? People recognize they make that association naturally when you're the one that helps them get to their goals. And there doesn't have to be any braggadocious activity. There doesn't have to be anything like, "Hey, look at what we did for you. Look how we helped you." People make that connection on their own, man. Um, I love that you brought that up too. So I want to zoom in 10% further. Talk to me about your day to day actions now. Um, I think it's a really healthy principle. Someone who maybe isn't getting the lead generation activities, they're not fulfilled by their network, or they feel like their work isn't having an impact.
Mm.
They're just trying to get more of a lead generation, relationship building funnel going for themselves. I think it's really helpful to, and it's something that I wish I had in the beginning, was saying, okay, these are some tangible actions that you can do. So, for example, you did a really good job of making that example. So, what does a trustworthy person do? What is something that they would do? Well, they would say what they're going to do when they're going to do it. They're going to send the email on time. They're going to show up to the meeting on time. Very much objectifying those into like a checkbox list of tasks. We just talked about that too, of how I have to have, the tasks recurring in Notion. If you could say, okay, these are some of the things that trustworthy people do, what are some things that people who are trying to get better at sales, to get better at lead generation, what are some tactical things that they can live up to and see, like, okay, I'm on the right track here?
Yeah, so I think one way to approach this is to start out by whoever's listening and interested in this and thinking about this question for themselves is thinking about what does selling mean to me to begin with? I
Hmm.
think this is a really core distinction because if somebody goes into business development for their own business or whatever it is, and they think selling is dirty or it's tacky or it's pushy, they're going to default to doing things that are just don't feel that way to them. And it's all about their emotions. It's about aversion. It's about discomfort, emotional discomfort for them, right? And versus somebody who, like again, myself, it's not the right way to look at sales. It's just my way of looking at sales. It's about helping people solve problems and get to their goals and all that stuff, right? So
Hmm.
maybe the way I look at some tactics might be with a different frame of mind, right? Not the right one, but just a different one. So I think that's
Hmm.
the first place to start because what I see, and I've seen this for my whole career, is there's two camps and they can overlap. It's not just completely separate. There's a Venn diagram to this. But let's just say for simplicity's sake, there's the I don't sell. I don't need to sell because I build relationships, right? And that's their point of view. And they spend a lot of time doing things, and I'm not saying these are bad things to do, but they rely on getting referrals.
Hmm.
Relying on getting referrals and getting lots of referrals are two totally different things, right?
Hmm.
They rely almost 100% on that because they're not actively going out there and actually starting conversations. Maybe they're going to a lot of networking events. Nothing wrong with that. But if they're going in with the intention of, I'm not here to sell anybody, I'm just here to meet people.
Hmm.
Again, you and I talked about this. It's like, yeah, you are. And some people are very gregarious and they're outgoing. And they want to just meet people. But a lot of cases, it's also they're there for a reason. They're there to try to get clients. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's this dissonance inside of them that creates like this tension and they just don't want to be that person.
Yes.
The problem now, or you see this on LinkedIn all the time, like, oh, hey, I noticed that you like ice cream. I also like ice cream. We should connect. And then you connect with
Hmm.
them. I love ice cream. And then they were, hey, I saw you like ice cream. By the way, if you're ever looking for an IT company, like that's you're going in with this kind of false premise, I guess I'll put it, right?
Hmm.
So that doesn't mean again, to be very clear, I'm not saying the going to networking thing is a bad thing at all. I'm just saying it's like, what's the true intention? If
Yeah.
somebody's going to networking events strictly because they just want to help people, great, do it. But
Yeah.
I think that that's the first place to start because if somebody goes, selling is gross, I'm not a seller because I don't have to because my stuff is so awesome it should sell itself, then you're
Hmm.
you're very much limited to whatever those kinds of tactics might be.
Yeah.
Versus if you can get a comfortable idea about selling is about solving problems or whatever version of it that makes you understand that it's not about pushing people, it's not about being tacky, then you can look at it and say, okay, cool. How can I use other ways instead of going around and trying to just talk to people who may or may not ever meet somebody who's my ideal customer to begin with? Why don't I
Hmm.
just figure out who these people are that I want to help? Because I can easily find them now and just
Yeah.
reach out to them directly
Yeah.
and just be upfront and just be like, listen, I'm paraphrasing here, not to say don't write this in an email, but
Hmm.
just say, listen, I don't know if you happen to be looking for somewhere. I don't know if you have this challenge, or I don't know, but if you do, I have some ideas, or here's some things you might consider. Like, you're serving from the very first touch point. You're creating value,
Yeah.
even if you're in your outreach. But I think,
Hmm.
again, I could talk about tactics. I could talk about what I do all day. But if somebody's listening and going, yeah, selling's growth, they're not going to want to hear any of
Right.
that,
Yeah, that's
right?
such a good point. Yeah.
And again, backing up, I just, for people listening and yourself, I am not poo pooing going to networking events or like that. But if I'm going to go to an event for business, yeah, I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to talk to people. I'm not just like, are you a client? But I'm not going to fool myself into thinking that I don't actually have any purpose to be there other than just meeting people. Like, I have a real bone to pick about that, because I just
Yeah.
remember back in the day, in the 90s, like going to these networking events, like literally, like you're there and there's somebody's like, so what do you do? And they're like, giving you their business card, and they're literally looking over your shoulder while you're answering their questions to see if there's somebody else more
Yeah.
important.
Yep.
Like, that created a very bad taste in my mouth very early in my
Yeah.
adult life.
And
So
I'll
that's a bit of
also
a rant,
say,
so sorry.
no, not at all. Not at all. Your feelings, you are loved, you are appreciated. Your feelings are
Thanks.
validated. I will also say too, like the people that go to networking events as well, I think there's why a big reason why there's a lot of ambiguity around it and why the term itself is so associated with the wrong things is that when people say, "Oh, I'm just here to build relationships. I'm just here to meet people." Like, you can be objective and say, like, if someone asks you why you're here, for example, it's like, "Yeah, there are potential people that I could help here, and I'm looking to meet some of them." Like, great. Okay. Now there's no ambiguity around saying like, oh, we know why you're really here. You're not just here to get out of the house, oh, to stretch the legs. It's been a long day at the office. You can objectively say like, hey, there's some people that I could help here, and I'm looking to meet some of them and see if we'll be a good fit. It's okay to say that. So,
It's
um,
okay, and it's
yeah,
probably
to me,
refreshing to say that.
right, exactly. Um,
And real quick, sorry to there's one other aspect to this that I think, is very important for people to at least ponder and consider. Even if you love, like, there's plenty of people that just love networking. They love going to these events. I'm not one of them.
mhm,
I'm an outrovert, which is like a not even an introvert or an extrovert, but it's like it's just a whole thing. It's like, I can talk to you all day. I can talk to people all
yeah,
day. But you put me in a
hmm,
big room with a bunch of people in martini glasses, I'm like, oh my God, I just want to run out the door. So I'm not the prime candidate for that, right? I get very anxious.
hmm,
It's not my thing. However, I know that there's a lot of people, they love to schmooze, they love to just work parties, they love to do that stuff. Cool, do it all day long. Do it.
yeah,
Here's the thing to consider though. If you're trying to build an agency, or you're trying to build a consulting business, or whatever it is you're trying to build, you're a salesperson for a company. If you're limiting your business development activities to networking events, and there are a lot of people that do. That's all they'll
hmm,
ever do. They're just waiting for referrals, and maybe they'll be on LinkedIn, and then they'll go to events or virtual events.
hmm,
Keep in mind, you have to ask yourself, in that room, are there any people that are actually your ideal prospects?
yeah,
Because what I see a lot of is somebody who's trying to sell into enterprise level, they're going to sell training, and they're spending all their time at local chamber of commerce function, which is fantastic. How many
hmm,
people there do you think are going to be in the position to? So it's like you're spending all this time, and the problem is they think, oh, but I'm doing stuff,
yeah,
but they're not doing it because it's the most effective way to do it. They're doing it because it's the most comfortable. Just like me not doing that is because it's the most uncomfortable. So that's not the
yeah,
reason we
man.
want to do stuff. It's because it's uncomfortable. We want to figure out
Yeah,
why we're doing what we're doing.
man, Marcus, you're hitting me viscerally with that. And I told you a little bit when we first met that I index so hard on the in-person networking side for a long time. And it comes to a point where this is where like personal feelings and relationships get involved too. And I realized that that's why I had kept going to a lot of these in-person small business referral networking groups, and I just had to have the conversation too. Okay, and be honest with myself. Am I here because I like these people and I want to see
Yeah.
them win and I enjoying the conversations that I'm having with them, or am I actually doing this for my business? And a lot of the internal struggle from that comes when you say like, oh, this is an input, this is business productive. When you actually zoom out, you're like, okay, are there any people here that are actually ideal buyers of the problem that I solve? I think a lot of people who face that internal struggle just aren't having that conversation with themselves, but you
Mm,
just have to acknowledge why you're there and just be objective with it. It's not a failure to say like, okay, I'm spending time in rooms where I'm not being able to help people. I'm not being able to fulfill my purpose. And because of that, I'm shortchanging, the value that I can actually provide. I think when people go for too long without either getting feedback or closing that feedback loop of how what they're doing is making an impact, and that comes
mm,
from spending time in the wrong rooms, especially people who sell, like you said, higher ticket B2B relationship driven services like that. You have to be in the right rooms in order to feel like you're on the right track, because I mean, the visceral example for me is trying to sell a $10,000 website to, you know, like startups and small business owners who are in services. And you feel that delineation when you feel like you're the black cat because you're not in a place where what you're doing is valued. So I highly encourage people to keep at it until you either find that or just be objective and use that social awareness. Say, like, okay, this could be a place where I could help people and I'm going to meet people who value what I do and could be potential partners. That's a
yeah,
very underlooked thing to actually be objective with it like that and assess events, assess, how you're spending your time beforehand. Um,
yeah. Can I
but yeah,
add
man,
one real quick thing? Sorry, I just wanna
yeah,
add one
absolutely.
caveat too, and just to
Yeah.
in full fairness and approaching in a balanced way. There are people that really look at networking as in the right way. They see
Hmm.
networking as, "Hey, look, yes, I'm here to build my business, or I'm networking is part of my career. It's there for my career. It's long term." They approach it
Hmm.
by the best way for me to build my business this way is to focus on helping others, maybe in ways that have nothing to do with my business, right? Just helping them,
Hmm.
connect them with other people. They're wired for
Yeah.
that, right? And that doesn't mean I'm not. That doesn't mean I won't help people. It's just like it's not where I'm going to spend all my time because I want to be in
Yeah.
these problem solving conversations. So
Yeah.
so for somebody who's wired like that, and they're the the super connector type. We know them, right? They have what used to be Rolodexes, right? They have this really
Yeah.
this list of they know everybody, right? And so, yes, if you're that person and you're walking into a local chamber networking event and your intention is, I'm going to meet people, I'm going to follow up with them, I'm going to have coffee with them, I'm going to learn about what they're
Hmm.
looking for. It might have nothing to do with me or my business. And I'm going to connect them with, like, oh, please do that. Absolutely. The
Yeah.
world needs more of those people. And if the idea is,
Absolutely.
yes, they're doing it to build their career, but they know in the long term it's going to pay back. They're not doing it for no reason, but they get it. It's a long thing. It's going to come back to them. It's not the, well, and by the way, since now we had coffee, if you ever need it, but like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Exactly. Exactly, dude. That's such a good caveat. I didn't even think about that. I think another good that brought up another idea for me is like reps also. So I don't regret a lot of the time I spent doing that, and I don't think anyone should. Like I said, you look
No,
back
no.
and
Yeah.
you realize like, okay, intentions didn't match reality a little bit. But you learn, especially like say for like I was 22, dude. Like I was just getting started. The reps of saying what you do in front of people, being able to articulate your service and the value it provides, even if it's not getting feedback. I think especially if it's not getting feedback, because then when people start to actually respond to it and say like, "Wow, I could really that's actually solving my problem," it gets even easier. So I highly
Yeah.
encourage people to say, even if it's your local chamber event, even if it's your local free luncheon that's happening close to you, just get good at saying, "Okay, this is who I am. This is what I can do." And referrals, one, are going to happen a lot more because people can make that connection. When the when comes up in their mind, they could be, someone who could introduce you to that perfect fit. Maybe they're not in that room, but also just the reps of getting better at saying who you are and what you do can't be overstated. Like I've read the intro of this podcast 115 times now. Even
Yeah.
if it's, not reaching the right audience, which I think it is, I've done it before and I'm a lot more comfortable doing it so that when it does come to like, wow, there's actually stakes here. I'm actually in front of someone. You're not tripping over your words. That doesn't become a roadblock.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point you made there. I love that.
Well, it's a great point that you just made. There's no such thing as a mistake when it comes to this, as long as we're paying attention, right? So if somebody's doing
Mhm.
whatever, even if somebody's doing the opposite, they're like, "Oh God, I got to do cold calling," and they hate it, and they've done it for 2 months, and they're
Yeah.
like, "I'd rather work anywhere other than do this." Like, okay, you learned something. You learned
Mhm.
something. Cool.
Yep.
Like, don't not do it because somebody on a podcast has an opinion about it, but just realize, like, you got to think about why you're doing things, and they can be for any reason, but it's got to make sense.
Yeah. 100%. Man, I feel like we could talk about this all day. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good place to kind of land the plane. It's a good chapter to our meeting at Java Central in Westerville. So,
Yeah.
man, I'd love to give you a platform, talk about where people can continue the conversation. I know you're at Brand Dog, but if people want to connect with you offline, start one of these awesome conversations, I guarantee you they're in for a treat. First of all,
Uh,
but where can they find you to do that?
Well, yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. Well, like you said, I'm with Brand Dog, and we're a full service B2B marketing agency. You know Matt, the founder, very well. That's how you and I met. We build brands and websites. We also offer growth marketing subscriptions to support fast scaling mid market businesses. So primarily in the B2B space. So if you're interested in reaching out and just chatting with me about really anything, and by the way, this is where I enjoy networking, when we talk about actual deep conversations like this. I could
Hmm.
do a podcast every day. I love this stuff. So
Yeah.
anybody that's interested, for certainly feel free to check out our website, the agency. It's branddog.com. But also please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Marcus Schaller. You'll see my face on there. So there's not many Marcus Schallers out there in the world, but yeah, to anybody that's interested in chatting or just picking my brain about these kinds of things, I love talking about it, and I'm a I'm I'm a believer in entrepreneurship. I'm a believer in business. I'm a believer in selling, and I care a lot about this as an art form and a science and a vocation and a craft. So, if anybody's struggling with this stuff, hit me up. I'm not in there's a lot of people that know a lot more about this than I do, but at the very least it might be able to be like something that you're stuck on, and just chatting can help you get unstuck.
Yeah. And I'll say too, like the last thing I'll say for the listeners is that I'm personally very grateful, not just for getting to know you, but also for I think there's a lot of overlap kind of in our opinions and philosophies around how
Mm.
we spend a lot of our day. And as someone that's in the more genesis phase of, doing it for themselves and, doing it on behalf of someone else, eventually working that way, it has been an immense conversational value to just talk about these ideas around relationships and framing it in a way to where it isn't that yucky thing that, especially when I first started, I had that head trash for myself. So, talking through these ideas has personally helped me a lot, and I think it's going to help the listeners a lot as well. So, I just want to say a huge thank you, and I encourage people to get in touch.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. I'll probably cut it off, either before I said that last thing or
That's okay.
after you did
You're,
this.
you'll
But
feel the spot.
yeah, yeah, but dude, you're very well